Stephen van Rensselaer, Roman IV. Stephen van Rensselaer, March 29, 1789, May 28, 1868. Known as the young patroon and sometimes the last of the patroons, was the last patroon of Rensselaerswyck. Early life. Van Rensselaer was born on March 29, 1789 in Albany, New York. He was the son of Stephen van Rensselaer, Roman III, 1765–1839, and Margarita Peggy Schuyler, 1758–1801. His father served as lieutenant governor of New York from 1795 to 1801, elected with Governor John Jay. He was one of 3 children, and the only to live to adulthood, born to his parents before his mother's premature death in 1801. Shortly thereafter, in 1802, his father married Cornelia Patterson, daughter of William Patterson, the second governor of New Jersey, and later an associate justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Through his father's second marriage, Van Rensselaer became a half-brother to Cortlandt Van Rensselaer, 1808–1860, and Henry Bell Van Rensselaer, 1810–1864, a United States representative in the House of Representatives and brigadier general in the Union Army during the American Civil War. Stephen graduated from Princeton University in 1808. Family. His paternal grandfather was Stephen van Rensselaer, Roman II, 1742–1769, patroon of Rensselaerswyck, a large land grant in upstate New York awarded by the Dutch to his ancestor Kiliaan van Rensselaer, 1586–1643. His paternal grandmother was Katharina Livingston, 1745–1810, daughter of Philip Livingston, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. His grandfather died in 1769, when his father was only 5. His maternal grandfather was Philip Schuyler, 1733–1804, a Revolutionary War general. His maternal grandmother was Catherine van Rensselaer, 1734–1803, the daughter of Johannes van Rensselaer, 1707–1783, and his first wife, Angelica Livingston, 1698–1746/47. Johannes was the grandson of Hendrik van Rensselaer, 1667–1740. Career. Van Rensselaer served in the New York militia and retired with the title of Major General. Rensselaerswyck Manor. After his father's death in 1839, he inherited the West Manor of Rensselaerswyck through his father's will. He made many improvements to the manor house, which was largely reconstructed and refitted from designs by British architect Richard Upjohn, and moved to the home from his residence in New York City on June 3, 1840. His father's will directed him and his brothers to collect and apply the back rents, approximately US $400,000, equivalent to $9,700,000 in 2020, toward the payment of the patroons' debts. Once the rent notices went out, the farmers organized and held public meetings in protest. Van Rensselaer refused to meet with a committee of anti-renters and turned down their written request for a reduction of rents or any other settlement. His refusal infuriated the farmers, and on July 4, 1839, a meeting was called at Berne for a declaration of independence from landlord rule. Van Rensselaer and the other heirs secured writs of ejectment in suits against tenants in arrears. There were crowds of angry tenants that turned into a posse of 500 men. Governor William H. Seward was called for military assistance and issued a proclamation calling on the people not to resist the enforcement of the law. While the tenants continued refusing to pay rent, the sheriff evicted some, but was unable to dispossess an entire township. By 1845, the anti-renters succeeded in getting the New York state legislature to abolish the right of the landlord to seize the goods of a defaulting tenant and tax the income which landlords derived from their rent. Soon thereafter, the Constitutional Convention of 1846 prohibited any future lease of agricultural land which claimed rent or service for a period longer than 12 years but did not address existing leases. Between 1846 and 1851, the anti-renters elected sheriffs and local officials who paralyzed the efforts of the landlords to collect rents and threw their weight to the candidates of either major party who would support their cause. Rivalries between and within the Whig and Democratic parties enabled the anti-renters to exert more influence than their numbers warranted. As a result, they had a small but determined bloc of anti-rent champions in the Assembly and the Senate who kept landlords uneasy by threatening to pass laws challenging land titles. The anti-rent endorsement of John Young, the Whig candidate for governor in 1846, proved decisive. Governor Young promptly pardoned several anti-rent prisoners and called for an investigation of titles by the Attorney General. The courts eventually ruled the statute of limitations prevented any questioning of the original titles, declaring that the holders of perpetual leases were in reality freeholders. The Court of Appeals outlawed the quarter sales, i.e., the requirement in many leases that a tenant who disposed of his farm should pay 1/4 of the money to the landlord. As their position became more tenuous, the landed proprietors gradually sold out their interests. In August 1845, 17 large landholders announced that they were willing to sell. Later that year, Van Rensselaer agreed to sell his rights in the Helderberg townships. In 1848, his brother William, who had inherited the East Manor in Rensselaer County, also sold out his rights in over 500 farms. Finally, in the 1850s, two speculators purchased the remaining leases from the Van Rensselaers. After his widow's death, the manor house became part of the general estate. Personal life. He was married on January 2, 1813 to Harriet Elizabeth Bayard 1799–1875, daughter of William Bayard 1761–1826 of New York City. Together, they had the following children survive to adulthood: Margaret Schuyler Van Rensselaer 1819–1897, who married John de Peyster Dow 1812–1901 in 1837. They divorced, and in 1851 she married Wilmot Johnson 1820–1899. Cornelia Patterson Van Rensselaer 1823–1897, who married Nathaniel Thayer Jr. 1808–1883. Stephen Van Rensselaer 1824–1861, who married Annie Louise Wild in 1858. Catherine Van Rensselaer 1827–1909, who married Nathaniel Berry 1811–1865. Justine Van Rensselaer 1828–1912, who married Dr. Howard Townsend 1823–1867. Fayard Van Rensselaer 1833–1859, who married Laura Reynolds 1830–1912, and to Marcus T. Reynolds. Harriet Van Rensselaer 1838–1911, who married John Schuyler Crosby 1839–1914. Eugene Van Rensselaer 1840–1925, who married Sarah Boyd Pendleton 1846–1923, a descendant of Alicia Boyd. Stephen Van Rensselaer Roman IV died on May 28, 1868 in Albany, New York. In his will he left the Van Rensselaer Manor House and grounds, as well as US $15,000, equivalent to $300,000 in 2020 a year, to his widow. About 2,500 acres between the Troy and Shaker roads, north of the manor house and in which he had a life estate, reverted to his half-brother, William Patterson Van Rensselaer. The remainder of the estate was divided among his children or the heirs of his children that predeceased him. The property was valued at about $1,500,000, equivalent to $29,200,000 in 2020. Descendants. His grandson was John Elliott Thayer 1862–1933, an amateur ornithologist. His granddaughter, Cornelia Van Rensselaer Thayer 1849–1903, married J. Hampton Robb 1846–1911, a New York State Senator, in 1868. Their daughter, Van Rensselaer's great-granddaughter, Cornelia van Rensselaer Thayer b. 1881, married Danish Count Karl Moltke 1869–1935 in 1907. Through his grandson, Stephen van Rensselaer Crosby 1868–1959, he was the great-grandfather of Henry Sturgis Crosby 1898–1929, a bon vivant, poet, and publisher who for some epitomized the lost generation in American literature, who was married to Mary Phelps Jacob 1891–1930.